Well, welcome everyone to this month's Power Hour. Our vendor is joining us is Home Care Pulse. They will be covering turning client and caregiver feedback into increased revenue. My name is Chris Tremp. I'm the Vice President for Swift Ops. Just a couple housekeeping notes before we get started about what to expect. Everyone is muted upon entry, so don't worry about that. The chat function is there for you inside of your Zoom. If you cannot locate that, look for your Zoom toolbar. It is located there. Time permitting, which we should have, there will be Q&A at the end of the presentation. I can allow folks to unmute themselves at that point if they need to. Also, we're going to have some polls that post out during this session. So please, we urge you to answer the polls. It'll be very helpful to get your feedback on your current situation and stuff. And Home Care Pulse will handle collecting that information and answer any questions from there. And also wanted to let everybody know that Swift Ops and Home Care Pulse have an impending integration partnership, which is set for release in later 2021, looking like the fall, where their products in terms of learning and surveys will be integrated into Swift Ops. So it's a great partnership that we're excited about. We're currently working on the construction of that integration, and we'll have a lot more information closer to the rollout date. But we wanted to get Home Care Pulse here to share some of their expertise as well. So for right now, that's all for me. I will pass it over to Darin Ellsworth, who will take over from here. Darin, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction. Let me share my screen here. Make sure we've got everything on the same page. Chris, if you'll just let me know that you're seeing it, and I'm going to assume everyone will be able to.
I am.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited to be here today. Very excited about the partnership. As Chris mentioned, there's a lot of opportunity for us to work together, and appreciate the time today for us to come and speak a little bit about client and caregiver feedback and how we can turn that into some results for agencies that might be joining us here today. So just a little background on myself. I am a huge advocate of just feedback in general. I started my career doing software sales at one of the world's largest software companies for surveys, Qualtrics, if anyone's familiar with them. And so it's really kind of ingrained in who I am now. And I would say before I ever started working there, I didn't see as much value in surveys and thought it was more harassment. But nowadays, having had the experience to work in that space and really kind of data analytics, seeing the value for agencies, how you can really leverage that data to turn it into new business, how you can make business-driven decisions through data. There's a lot of power, and that's what I hope to really relay here today. So today's purpose, there's really kind of a three pillars here we're going to focus on. So first is how to use client caregiver feedback to make those smarter business decisions. What to do with your NPS, Net Promoter Score. I'll go into what that is and how to use the positive and negative feedback. And then lastly, how to build a brand that resonates with clients and caregivers. So we're going to go into detail on how you can implement this and really try and better your business because of it. So our first poll here today, Chris, if you wouldn't mind launching that. So how many tuned in live here today are gathering client and caregiver feedback? So I'll give a minute for everyone to participate that has joined us. This just gives us a quick idea on who is actually conducting currently and how you're approaching it. Give another 10 seconds or so here, Chris. Awesome. Okay. So let's talk about how we can use this for increased revenue. And before we get into that, I want to talk about a little story here. And if anyone has heard the Carpenter's House, I apologize. If you have, I'm gonna repeat it. But I do think that there's some value here. So an elderly carpenter, he was about to the age of retirement, and he told his employer or his contractor of his plans of leaving the house building industry, and that he wanted to live a more leisurely life with his wife and extended family. And so he was saying he was going to miss the paycheck, but he'd get by. And so the contractor was really sorry to see this worker go. He was always a reliable worker, did a very high quality work. And so he had begged the carpenter just one last job for him. And so, but before he went and retired. And so the carpenter, kind of casually accepted this, but his heart wasn't in it. And so as he got to work on building this home, his level of effort wasn't quite there. It was a little bit half-hearted. He had taken shortcuts in the development of putting everything together, used inferior building materials compared to what he had done in the past. So the end quality of his building was much below his usual standards. And then when the project finished, the contractor came and inspected the home. He walked around and he took the key out of the door and he handed it to the carpenter. He said, "My friend, this house is yours. This is my gift to you as a thanks for all the years of hard work." And the contractor said, the old man was shocked and a little embarrassed by the level of work that he had produced. If only this carpenter had known that that this was going to be handed to him, he likely would have done things very different. And so, like the old carpenter, many of us do not give the best on our job or our effort. And then we find ourselves living in the poor quality house that we've built. And so today, really want to focus on what kind of home we're building for ourselves and the quality, what's the foundation of it? And then how do we turn that also into not just, I think a lot of times that, my initial thought would be that this would be geared towards owners, but really anyone that's involved in the agency. How do we create ownership within your organization and create a culture of communication and feedback? And so we're certainly going to cover that today. So let's first talk about NPS and eNPS. For those of you that aren't familiar with Net Promoter Score or Employee Net Promoter Score, geared towards the caregivers as the eNPS measures, it was developed by Bain & Company back in 2003. It is virtually used in every industry. In my past, I used it when I was selling or speaking with agencies from healthcare to financial world, to banking, to retail. It is commonly used, and there's a couple of reasons why. First, it just efficiently categorizes people into certain categories. So there's the promoters, the passives, the detractors. So the question is right there. On the scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend friends and family to our services, right? So we got the 9s and 10s, those are the promoters. 7s and 8s are passives. Everything below that falls into the detractor category. Now, for obvious reasons, it's great to understand who falls into which category, right? We certainly want to be able to understand, because that gives us an idea on how they interpret or view the brand. But there are a lot of really great things that come from the Net Promoter Score. I'm going to talk about some of the follow-up that we can do in some slides here following this. But initially, Net Promoter Score was developed to really understand customer loyalty and provide with valuable feedback. But it also brings a lot of other valuable pieces here. It gives predictability and shows signs about churn, customer retention, and even revenue. And even then, furthermore, NPS is directly correlated with revenue. According to the London School of Economics, an average increase of 7 in NPS correlates with about a 1% growth in revenue. So there is direct comparisons. And if you are asking any questions that are standardized amongst any of your clients and caregivers, this would be a question that I would absolutely ask. And if you don't have standardized questions, I would certainly push you towards standardizing questions as well, because it will help in being able to track that information. So, what is the goal of NPS? And as I mentioned, to really understand the outcome, first and foremost, it tells us who is likely to recommend. And as you see down there, it talks about, identifying promoters with your, are one of your biggest number one marketing sources. You'll understand greater gaps into the pain points and the processes. So it's not only about the numbers. One of the best parts about the NPS survey is the ability to capture valuable free-form feedback. So that follow-up as to, why would you rate them this way? When we're talking about, hey, Mr. Caregiver, thank you so much for giving us a 7, but why? Which is equally important. We want to have that quantitative data that allows us to really start to track and trend through the organization, but we also need to understand the whys behind it so that we can actually make some kind of lasting change, and we can implement those processes. Consistency is going to be key in this. So we don't want just a one-time snapshot either of NPS of one caregiver at any given time. We want to have it ongoing. So as it continually comes into any kind of reporting functionality that either you've developed, you're working with a third party like a home care pulse, you need to have that on a regular basis so that you can kind of see and track how the organization is doing. And let me go into that a little bit more, but we would say we don't want you to just stop at NPS, or we wouldn't recommend that, certainly. There's a number of different categories, and these are some of the complementary indicators that you can look at. So when looking at feedback from promoters, passives, or detractors, you can learn a lot of things, right? For the promoters, for example, you can understand a little bit more as to why they're so loyal, why they're so satisfied. And then on the flip side, you can understand, in more detail from the detractors, what they don't like about you. So let me just kind of paint this picture for a minute here. If we're talking about having a standardized program with, I can speak, I'm very biased. I work here at Home Care Pulse. I love our platform. I think it's a very valuable tool. So I'm going to speak from the standpoint that I do understand, which is our solution. But what we've identified is a few things to really help here. Having the regular feedback. So we're serving generally 7 to 10% of the overall population every month. We want data coming in month over month. We're the third party. As the third party, we've seen a ton of value in that. And I'll get into more detail there, but just being a third party creates validity, anonymity, a number of different really helpful things in the collection of this data. And then last is that we're doing these surveys over the phone. And so whether you're using Home Care Pulse or trying to identify how you're going to establish this program, what I would not recommend is doing just these one-time engagement surveys. Now, certainly there's value in an engagement survey. And what I mean by an engagement survey would be a big blast of conducting feedback. Now, what's valuable there is you will have those standardized questions that are going out to everyone. Absolutely. But it is a snapshot in time. So let's just take a look last year, COVID, back in 2020. Had you done an engagement survey at the beginning of March, that data probably would have been totally irrelevant by April, right? Just with all the extreme changes that we saw across the board. And so for us in this home care space, there's absolutely value in getting snapshot in time, but we are no Fortune 500 company where we've got, or a McDonald's, where you've got literally thousands of people walking through your door every single day. You can just blast off emails. You have to make it count. And so for you as an organization, you need to identify when are the points that we can interact with these individuals? How often should we be interacting? And so Home Care Pulse, we have that really dialed in, where we are reaching out on a monthly basis to a certain sample size, and we are surveying them. We're getting this feedback. We're drilling into the data. We're asking the whys. We're getting to the bottom of the picture here. And we want to get to the root or the heart of it, right? And what this is going to allow us to do is now see what this data is telling us. It's going to tell you a story. It is going to paint the picture of where you're at. and where you need to go. And so the idea here is if we have data coming in month over month, you're going to be able to make data-driven decisions. Because if you have feedback that comes in, let's say a passive that is a 7, and it comes in and they're saying, they could ask more what they could do to help. Well, great. In that case, we know what that particular client needs. They need us, our caregivers, to be asking more what they could do to help. But as a business owner, from an operations standpoint, from the business perspective, is that valuable? Certainly, but that's not the most valuable piece. The most valuable piece now is that we can identify, hey, is this one person? Is this a trend? Are we seeing this with multiple individuals? Again, having the standardized questions are going to help with that. And we're going to be able to say, yes, it looks like, there's been 5, 6 people over the last few months who have said the exact same thing. We've got a problem. Let's address it and we'll figure it out. I'll talk to you more about how we address it. We implement that change and boom, we fix the problem internally. Or we're also identifying, hey, this is an outlier or an outlier. This particular individual, this is the only feedback that we've gotten in the last 5, 6 months. Well, we know what we need to do to make this particular client happy, but we're not now making knee-jerk reactions based off one person's feedback. And so we can identify, again, who the outliers are, what we need to do to make them overall satisfied and happy, turn them into promoters. But we also can identify some of the problems within the business itself, and identifying certain categories, what you're really focused on, and having standardized questions that's coming in will allow you to track and trend that data. So here's just from us and our standpoint, just a quick case study that we've done. And so you'll see up there where it says the first line, you need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly about your business. So just a couple of points here. I work with agencies in every pocket of the country every day. And what I hear quite often from agencies is that they're kind of scared about implementing a program. They're worried about the feedback that they're going to get. So they have some kind of an internal program that is these check-ins. Hey, how are you doing, Mr. Client, Mr. Caregiver? Great. Anything we can do better? Great. And a lot of times you're not able to get to the real problem of what may be going on. And maybe a lot of times, the caregiver or the client, because working through a third party does create that sense of anonymity, they may not feel that they can speak freely and tell you exactly what they're feeling. And so what I hear often is, they're really scared to get this feedback. And you really do have to be very, very vulnerable here in offering up yourself and saying, hey, we really want this feedback because we want to get better. You want to know the ugly, even though it really hurts to hear it. And I don't know anyone that out there just thrives on going up to people and saying, hey, what do you not like about me? Right. So it is a hard thing to do. But as you get past that and you become vulnerable, you help the clients and the caregivers understand why you need to know so that they can become a better workplace for them, that you'll provide a better service for their family members, whatever it may be. You really need to get to that place. And so, I would submit that that's going to be one of the biggest differences for you is being able to get to the place where you feel comfortable as the owner, as the administrator, whatever it may be, that you want to know and you want to act and make changes. Because in addition to being vulnerable, you have to be willing to act on it. Otherwise, there's no sense in collecting it, right? So here's just some statistics that you can take a look at here. You can see there that 91% that are unhappy, they're unlikely to purchase again. The one to me that is maybe the scariest is that middle one, that on average, dissatisfied customers tell 9 to 15 people about their experience. I think that number is constantly growing now too, just with social media, the platforms that we have that people can go out and say how they feel. Online reviews plays a big factor there. So if we are not able to negate these conversations to internal conversations rather than an online platform where everyone, rather than just affecting 9 to 15 people, it's everyone that comes across your Google profile, right? We want to get in front of that. And how do you do that? It's by ongoing, constant feedback, that you really have this open communication with either the caregivers, the clients, whoever it may be. So this comes from all of our questions that we're asking. Just to give you some ideas, Home Care Pulse, we work with 2,000 plus customers across the country. And this exact program, it's very specific to only the home care industry. All of our agencies are home care agencies. And so these are some of the low ENPS scored feedback surveys from January 1 till now. So in the last 6 months, and you'll see the compatibility one. What I think is interesting, it says, I would like them to listen to what types of clients that I may want instead of just picking what they think is best for me. Listen is one of those words that comes up quite often in these lower ENPS or Net Promoter Scores. And one of the things that I find fascinating is how often, agencies don't take action, or they get the feedback and they're not following up on it. That's absolutely crucial, is figuring out ways to now, how do we implement the change? How do we fix this and improve upon it? And I know that seems like a basic idea, and in theory it really is, but it can be difficult to execute on. And having a program like Home Care Pulse implemented, whether it's Home Care Pulse or something different, having something that is going to be able to be reporting so that you will have it coming in on a regular basis, and then giving you ideas on how to now take action on it is absolutely crucial there. Here's just some more ideas on some of the negative feedback, and this is more client geared that you can kind of read through here. But again, same idea, we need to have regular feedback, and we would absolutely say that surveying clients and caregivers both are crucial. They both interact with one another. If we're only surveying the clients, there's a lot of feedback that you're missing out on by not understanding the caregiver. The happier the caregivers are that you're working with, and the more satisfied they are to work with your agency, the better experience those clients are going to have. So they directly impact one another. So if you are not surveying both, I would absolutely recommend that as well. So what do we do with the feedback? As I mentioned before, HCP, we're aggregating everything into a platform for you, an online dashboard that's going to generate monthly reports. So if you aren't using HCP or something like it, I would recommend trying to create some kind of Excel spreadsheets, something that is tangible, that you can take to the team, that you can have the conversation with. So you see these scheduled feedback follow-up meetings, and having some kind of a standardized process that everyone knows there is going to be follow-up. I say this all the time when I'm speaking with agencies, but Home Care Pulse, while I believe that we can be a valuable tool, it's not a valuable tool if you don't use it. And we're really the axe to chop down the tree for you. And so you got to pick up that axe and you got to swing it. You got to be willing to start to use this information. And then like we've I've already talked about, looking for patterns and then assigning tasks to those patterns. So we'll get into a little more specifics here on how you can conduct some of these follow-up meetings. So let's first talk about who should be inviting to these meetings. The owners, the executives, staff, coordinators, sales and marketing can often be crucial in having in these. So any other key personnel that would be valuable, you all can discuss internally and figure out your business best and who needs to be there. But that just gives you some ideas. In preparation for the meeting, coming with printed copies of the survey results, having some kind of a detailed meeting agenda, so you know what is going to be talked about, having goals set for what the meeting is, what the objectives are, and then any other materials that you'll need to display the information, maybe projectors or something like that. Walking through all the content on the slides, again, Home Care Pulse with the monthly reports, it's broken up and very detailed. There's benchmarking, that you can kind of see and how you're stacking up, but then it'll also go through a list of what the client feedback is, what the caregiver feedback is, and allow you to work through it. So we actually have a worksheet that is free that we're providing to everyone. So Chris, you can share that in the chat at this point. Anyone on here can access it. We can send it after as a follow-up, but it'll give you ideas again on these 4 categories of how to break it into buckets, how to understand the differences, and you need to be making sure that you're tracking it, that you're writing this information down. And so month over month, it is going to be very important for you to then pull all of this information together. So one of the things here that I want to quickly highlight is, in today's world with recruitment, retention of caregivers, it's become increasingly difficult to find that. Identifying who those promoters are. I'll talk a little bit more of how you can use this in your marketing efforts and even in your recruitment message. But what I like about identifying the promoters of the caregivers is these are those caregivers that are often going to be the more loyal caregivers, the ones who have been with you for some time, the ones that you wish you could make a cookie cutter and make 1,000 of them, right? That you could just constantly be pulling from. Well, these are individuals who are saying, yes, I would recommend, right? So right then and there, that's the low-hanging fruit. Let's identify the qualities around each one of these caregivers. What do they like about us? Why have they stayed with us? And identifying those attributes allows you to then have a much more pointed recruitment messaging, right? Because now we can start to identify, well, this is what these caregivers' qualities are. This is why we like them. Let's try and attract those same people. And this is the messaging that's going to attract those people. So again, the foundation of this is feedback. We need to know where we're at. But now we're trying to figure out, okay, well, now how can we use this to our betterment, not only understanding the business processes and improving the business, but how can we recruit better? How can we market better? How can we position our brand in our designated area as the brand to be working with? Okay. So kind of what we've been talking about here, how to utilize the positive feedback with your promoters. As I said before, this really is the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to talk about the word of mouth referrals in a minute, but the recognizing and rewarding, a lot of organizations that have implemented this see great success. And again, it really helps create a culture around ongoing feedback, where you are rewarding the internal staff. You're using this as recognition tools for the caregivers when the clients are raving about them, and really trying to use that. And then the last one, getting word of mouth referrals. These are the people that are saying, yes, I would absolutely recommend. So why are we not asking? Right then and there, these are the ones that we should be asking immediately. The follow-up question, well, who do you recommend? Right? And creating some kind of a client referral program, a caregiver referral program, maybe having bonuses for those caregivers when they refer, and identifying who those people are. So last but not least, let's talk about taking the data to referral partners. And this is something that I really am passionate about because I've seen it work firsthand in my own experience with the business I worked for. Previously to coming to Home Care Pulse, I actually was a part of and helped manage the sales and marketing for a home health agency here locally. And in this market, it's a pretty competitive market for a smaller, more rural area here in Southeast Idaho, because we have a regional hospital and all of that. So, I was tasked with going out and trying to build a better reputation within the community, how to drum up referrals. And one of the things that I found most difficult was everyone had a story, right? And I'm sure that many of you on here have a story that's really valuable, that, positions you as one that is, a leading provider in your community. But frankly, everyone says the same thing. Even though the stories vary, they're all saying they're the best. And that was the frustrating thing, because I felt like we were the best, but I was being, having the same message as Joe Schmo up the street, because they were saying they were the best. And it was really hard to designate who was the best when I'm going and positioning our agency against all the case managers. And so, what I found is I'm walking in, I've got my big goodie basket, I've got a smile on my face, I drop it off at the case manager's desk, and I tell them these are the reasons. And then as I'm walking out, I see 4 other people in line with the same big smile on their face and a similar goodie basket they got from Costco too. And so where I saw value and was able to separate myself was right here, taking this data that you are collecting and using it. And this is, again, where a third party can be valuable because it creates the validity in the data. It's not saying, hey, me as the owner, I collected this on my own, and here's the testimonials. No, this is a third party that collected it. We also have awards that you can use. But the more data points that you have, hey, take a look at our testimonials. They speak for themselves. Look at our online reviews. Here's our hospital readmission rates right now. They're lower than anyone else around. Here is what our net promoter score is. Anything that you can use as ammunition is going to be valuable for you when positioning this. Okay. So things have changed quite dramatically in the last 5 years. When we're talking about the customer acquisition cost, or CAC, and then the caregiver acquisition cost and what it takes to replace a caregiver, in the last 5 years, it has increased more than 30%. So for example, 5 years ago, you needed $515 to acquire a new customer. Today, you need $600. So it is starting to increase dramatically year over year. You see right there, the average cost to replace a caregiver is around $2,600. This comes from our annual benchmark study. Now, let's just look at the satisfaction management program, why this is important, okay? If we can eliminate even 2, 3 caregivers from leaving your organization, right then and there, that pays for, or more than pays for itself in a satisfaction management program. If we can reduce the turnover percentage that you have within your organization by even 5%, that right there, bottom line, will pay for it. If we can help you have and create the total lifetime value of a client and add it even to another month or 2 months, that will pay for itself. So I'm just helping you understand the ROI, because oftentimes when it comes to surveys, the cost of what it takes to complete the surveys is what's looked at. And then that's where I see agencies deviate from saying, hey, there's other places we want to spend money. And I understand, money can be tight and you want to put it where it's best used. However, I will say, if you do not have a program in place, this is crucial to your growth. You need to have some kind of a feedback mechanism in place that's tracked, that you're trending, that you're making data-driven decisions with. If you do not, start now. Figure out how you can implement it, because again, you will be reducing costs of replacing caregivers, even just acquiring or keeping clients on a lot longer. So, we can add, just to kind of toot our horn a little bit about HCP. With the customers that are using us currently, we generate about 17% more in revenue. Agencies that were using us hired about 53% more caregivers in 2020, and they're actually retaining their clients 22% longer. Again, a lot of that I would attribute to we have a process that is ironed and vetted. We've been doing it for 12 years rather than having to go reinvent the wheel and do it on your own. So if we can help in some of those areas, just retaining the clients 22% longer, right then and there, pays for any fees that you would have with Home Care Pulse, in addition to other ways that you can generate ROI here. But the one thing I'll just mention is that feedback is the tip of the spear, okay? We want to create an ongoing feedback tool. If you're relying on Home Care Pulse to be hands down 100%, all the feedback for you, I don't think you're going to see as much value. It will certainly be helpful to have it coming in these reports, but where I say it's the tip of the spear, it can open up the floodgates to communication and helping the clients and caregivers understand why you need this feedback. And then again, having follow-up conversations based on the feedback that was received. That will come to, you know, in the worksheet that we've handed out here. You have the ability to write notes and take notes, and there should be action items to be following up, to really dive in greater detail as to opening up the conversation of what's going on and how we can improve. And those are the agencies that I see to be far more successful. So building a brand that resonates, where does that start? Right from the mission, vision, and core values. Where do you start to implement that? Into the logo, the website, recruiting touch points, working with, you know, clients. And then it continues through the onboarding process, the training, the scheduling. But then again, the foundation of this, of how you're doing on all of those things, comes down to gathering the ongoing feedback, and then making sure that we're keeping up with all of the changes that are regularly going on in home care. And that's the one thing we can count on, as we've seen over the years in home care, that there is always change, right? So where we would say is finding where they are and listening. Over here, the text in black is from a client perspective, and the text in blue is from a caregiver perspective. Now, we, as an agency, Home Care Pulse, you know, we take a sampling from all across this spectrum. We want to be understanding how caregivers and clients feel at every point along the way. And so it is randomized, but you as an agency, as you're trying to identify how you want to approach it, if you're not going to work with a third party, how can you create this where you are getting feedback on a regular basis at any point throughout the lifetime of working with your organization? So finally, you know, applying what you've learned. Again, find where people are throughout the process of working with you. You have to start gathering the feedback. Figure out how you're going to do it. Get your team internally. If you're not doing it, I'll say this, if your feedback is just these check-ins of, hey, how's it going? That's not good enough. I certainly think that there is value in having the, hey, how's it going, Mr. Client conversation. However, that is not going to give you accurate enough feedback. And the way that that is interpreted can vary from one person to another, whoever's asking, hey, how's it going, right? The way that one client supervisor over the other, it may be different. And so having those standardized questions, having a program in place is absolutely crucial. Taking action on that feedback, right? How are we going to use this to now better the business? We're getting the feedback, we're asking, we need to use it, and then structure your meetings around the feedback. Again, just having something that creates a great way to report on it, and then adjusting your business practices around what that feedback looks like. These are all things that are going to be important as you are developing your program. So that's really everything that I have today. Why don't we open it up to questions? Anyone have any questions that we would like to address here?
Feel free to use the chat function or unmute yourself. You can ask any question you'd like. Don't see any. I did send out the link to the page that you shared. So that's in the chat. If you do not have that, we can always follow up with that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We'll give it another minute or so.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little plug for Home Care Pulse as well. We have a lot of free resources similar to this document that Chris shared. So if you haven't visited Home Care Pulse, even if you're not a customer of ours, we try and put a lot of content that's for free to better agencies. Go check it out, and hopefully you can find something on there that is going to benefit you and your growth and your trajectory of your agency. All right, if there's no other questions, why don't we launch the poll here? Chris, if you wouldn't mind launching that.
I think it was tied to the last one, so they can answer question number 2.
Okay,
Of that
perfect.
poll that was out there. I did not end the poll or anything like that.
Okay, great.
And we appreciate Home Care Pulse. Appreciate you, Darin, spending some time with us and providing the information. If anyone needs to follow up, obviously you can contact Home Care Pulse, or you can reach directly out to us as well, and we can route you in the right direction to who you would talk to at Home Care Pulse. We're excited about the partnership that's upcoming and the integration that we're going to have between our 2 companies. So obviously there's a lot of exciting things to come, and this platform is going to become a lot more, I would say, user-friendly for SwiftOps users, because you'll have some integration there. You'll have some information flowing between the 2. If there's nothing else, then I appreciate everyone joining us. And again, appreciate Home Care Pulse for providing the presentation. And we will have another Power Hour next month with the details to come about the topic very soon. So appreciate everyone and have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.